you want to hold on to the best pieces of hair in the Premier League as much as possible. I mean, when Keith Andrews retired, I mean, losing his hair from the Premier League was a really disappointing thing.
All right, speaking of which, it's the best segue you've ever had. Keith Andrews, good morning to you.
I was going to slick that on. I like it. And
No
you
problem.
growing a beard on the subject of hair, or trying to grow a beard?
That's highly insulting.
Chris Sutton said his hair was very good now yesterday, Keith, so, you know.
All entitled to our opinions, yeah.
Hey, did you ever move on transfer deadline day?
I did, yeah. I moved to West Brom, so it was a bit of a drawn-out saga. It was the January window. Took the whole month. I came back from Ipswich from a loan move. There was all sorts of shenanigans going on at Blackburn when the Venke family took over, so I had to be very, very patient throughout the month of January, and then it got to the last day and I didn't know where I was going. I came into Blackburn at 9 o'clock in the morning. The window closed. I think it was 11 o'clock at that time. And as of 5, 6 o'clock, I was still in the canteen, not knowing exactly what club I'd be going to. There was a few interested, a couple of loans, West Brom, Wigan, Stoke then eventually came in. And my choice was to go to West Brom, but it needed that domino effect that we keep on hearing about in the transfer market. And unfortunately, it happened in time. I got in the car, drove down, and unfortunately got done about 10 o'clock that night.
And is the process that you talk to all three clubs, like at that stage, Blackburn are kind of like, look, you're definitely leaving, you can talk to whoever you want, and you kind of have the personal terms agreed, it's just at that point making sure the clubs, like, how is there a sequence of things that have to happen? The clubs have to agree a fee before you're allowed to talk about transfer, about personal terms. How does that work?
Yeah, well, in my scenario, it was very much that they needed to get a player out, and maybe in one or two of those clubs, I possibly wasn't the first choice player that they wanted to be, so they may have got let down in one. So the conversations would have happened between the agent, obviously, and those respective clubs, not me personally.
Right.
In terms of that deal, I was available to leave on a free. They wanted me off the wage bill, so they could bring someone in. So that was the domino effect for them. But then it was just a game of patience, really. So fortunately, it worked out, and I got myself to West Brom, and I enjoyed it there.
Is it anxious that day? Is it like one of the most anxious experiences you can have, or are you fairly resigned? Like, look, worst case scenario, I have a contract here, everything's going to be fine.
Well, it was very anxious. I was very nervous, and I was at certain stages throughout that day. I was banging on doors and saying, "You need to let me out. I need to just sign it," so I could leave even after that, because that was the year of the Euros in 2012. I'd had a good half season at Ipswich where I was scoring goals. I got back fit after a serious groin injury that nobody could really determine exactly what it was. So got back playing, had my fitness back. Then it was important I kicked on and stayed in the reckoning to go into the Euros in decent shape. And I felt West Brom first choice, second choice would have been Wigan. But ultimately, whatever that came around, I would have just had to take it because I wasn't going to feature at Blackburn.
Yeah. Keith, obviously we talk a good bit about the championship whenever we're chatting, and it kind of just thinking about it yesterday, like obviously the deadline closes there today as well. The championship, like as a Villa fan over the last couple of years, you kind of fully come to appreciate just how incredible a league it is. Everything goes down to the last couple of seconds of the playoffs. The relegation battle is one of the most cutthroat things in world sport, because like that's kind of the precipice for a lot of these big clubs who don't really want to be in the championship at all, and next thing they're in League One, and then the rewards are like winning the lottery for different teams as well. So it's an amazing league. I haven't been paying enough attention over the off season to know kind of who the winners and losers have been in the off season so far, but like Derby signing Wayne Rooney, adding another little level of intrigue to the whole thing. Has there been any overarching stories or anybody who's been a clear winner in the off season?
I think off-season it's been quite a bit of a slow burner in terms of recruitment, in terms of getting going. Lots of managerial changes. 10 new managers started on the opening day, which is again just ridiculous. It just shows the average tenure of managers at that level. But you have to say, in certain instances, like Derby being a prime example, the owner there gets quite a bit of stick, Mel Morris. But in the last two, he hasn't had any choice about it. The managers have opted to leave, and I think he's recruited a very good manager in Philip Co-coup, and even that, you know, the name, it's a real coup, I feel, for Derby to get someone in like Shay Gibbons, obviously still part of the coaching staff there. So I was at their game the other night, played very, very well. You mentioned Wayne Rooney. What type of impact will he have? I still think he'll have a very good impact on the pitch, regardless of the coaching aspect that everybody keeps on talking about. But I think it's a very level playing field this year, probably even more so than last year, barring Leeds. If they get 1 or 2 in today, because they lost Kamara Roof to Anderlecht in the last couple of days. And I feel that's a massive blow. Bamford played the other day and played quite well. Whether he'll be able to sustain that for 40, 50 games as the only real striker, I would say is unlikely.
What about Leeds? Are they going to be able to improve from last season? Is it a different prospect second season round with Bielsa?
Traditionally, second season doesn't go very well for Marcelo Bielsa, but I would say it would be the opposite this year, because he's had that amount of time with this set group of players. There hasn't been many changes. I mentioned Kamara Roof, Pontus Jansson went to Brentford. He's brought in Ben White to replace Pontus Jansson from Brighton, who had an unbelievable game in his first game last weekend against Bristol City. So they went to Bristol City and they basically toyed with them. They were outclassed in every single department. There was a stroll in the park, and it was the Leeds, the best of Leeds that we've seen last year. So I would anticipate they can make that next step and get over the line this year, because the work he's done with that group of players has been phenomenal. They're a joy to watch.
Yeah, they did. I mean, you did accurately predict that they were going to burn out towards the end of the season. It was exactly what happened. Because it's the second season and all the players know exactly what's happening, you've had the full pre-season and you're building on top of last season, does that mean that shouldn't happen this year?
I think so, and then him as well, having a year experience within the championship, maybe he needs to back off at certain stages. He likes to work with a small squad, Jer, so he doesn't like to have issues within the dressing room where somebody doesn't feel quite part of the journey that they're going on, and that's a balancing act, isn't it? So I just think all those things come into the equation. I like what he does. I've been on record as saying that I felt for them last year, because it got to a stage where they got back into it. They had their lull, but after Christmas they were, in terms of the form guide of the teams in the championship, they were 10th. So that tells its own story. They weren't clinical enough, and I thought on a few occasions in certain big games against Norwich, Sheffield United, Wigan at home, I thought the occasion got to them. I thought the journey that they were going on, the fans well and truly buy into up there. They are on Bielsa's bandwagon, and I think maybe the players maybe just got put off by that, and it got to them. But I would expect them to make that next step this year.
We want to talk a bit about the Premier League, Keith, and focus in on some of the Irish players. I think it's fair to say that most people's second team this season is going to be Sheffield United.
Yeah, look, I loved them last year on. I think you must have heard me going on about them, the way they played and the different style, and it was very refreshing. And I think that's what the Championship does bring. I think when you look at lower half of the Premier League, traditionally teams play a similar system. They look to maybe not get beat rather than go and try and win the game. I don't think that'll be the case, certainly in the first couple of months with Chris Wilder and Sheffield United. And you're right, the type of players that he already had in the building, and the Stevens, obviously McGoldrick, John Egan, and he's added to that with Callum Robinson, hasn't he? So Callum Robinson, I think, could be a big player for them this year. So yeah, I'm with you. I was due to be at that game on Saturday, but ironically, I've been changed onto the Leeds game. So.
We were talking to Conor Howard a little bit earlier on in terms of how you have to stay true to yourself to a point when you get promoted to the Premier League, especially when you get promoted playing such good football. But there has to be a practicality that comes into it. There has to be more of a robust style of play, I guess, is how a lot of these promoted teams will play. So how true to Sheffield United's style last season can Chris Wilder stay this season?
Well, all the talk is that he's going to continue it on. It's a back three. It's not a back five when it gets in full flow. Of course, at times they will have to drop in and soak up pressure against teams that are able to contain them and able to pin them in. But I think knowing him the way I do, which I have to confess isn't greatly, but when I have come across him, I really, really like him as a fella. I think he's as honest as the day is long. And this team's perform in that type of manner. So I would anticipate them having a real good go off probably the teams from 7th to 8th down in the Premier League. And I think at times against the top teams, they will pick and choose when they have a real go. They won't be the type of team to just sit back on the edge of their box, soak up pressure and try and hit teams on the counter-attack. I think they'll be refreshing for people that haven't seen them in the last couple of years.
I was making the point after we talked with Conor Howard that his career trajectory isn't a million miles away from yours, that, you know, there's a period where you come from the lower divisions and then eventually you make it into the Premier League, and when you get there you're ready for it because you've had to battle every step of the way, and there's been various stages where it looked like you might not make it. So when you do make it, you're going to enjoy it and you're going to make the absolute most of it. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more with you, Jerry. He's had to go backwards to go forwards, and every single step he's just taken it, I wouldn't say with ease, because even at the start of Aston Villa after his move from Barnsley, it took him a little bit of time to maybe take in the whole surrounding of the enormity of Aston Villa going from a club the size of Barnsley. And he's had to fight off a lot of potential players taking his place. And you're right, he's just gone up to the next step. And I would imagine, from bumping into him on a few occasions at games, at Ireland games, etc., he's an absolute diamond of a person. He's a thorough professional the way he approaches the game. I've got a lot of time for him, and I think he's proved in a green shirt over the last few months what an important player he'll be for us over the coming years. And if he can slot into Premier League life, and on paper, in terms of the time on the ball that you get, he should be able to show that array of passes and set pieces. You only have to look at what he did last weekend and in Villa's last pre-season game, what he's capable of. So yeah, I hope he has a big year, and I'm confident he can.
There's been a couple of threads during the transfer window as well from an Irish perspective, James McCarthy being the big one. What do you make of that move? Is it going to be a renaissance in McCarthy's career?
I sincerely hope so, and he's had a tough time, hasn't he, obviously, with the injury that he's had to go through, and then since he's been back fit and training, he just hasn't had a sniff. He hasn't been Marco Silva's cup of tea, clearly. He hasn't been able to gate crash any type of Premier League action. So, look, I think on the face of it, he should be a good sign for Palace. They have a decent midfield, but I think when you look at what they've got in there, Milivojevic, I think he could potentially slot in alongside him. I've worked under Roy Hodgson. He likes defence-minded midfielders. He likes to play in a structured way. And if I look at what he could do for James's game, I think it could be very good. But ultimately, James needs to just get on the pitch, get playing minutes, build up that fitness, because if he does, and again, he'll be a big player for us coming into the autumn.
His former teammate, Seamus Coleman, his position could be under threat after the Sidibe move to Everton this season. We've seen a lot of Sidibe. This Monaghan team obviously is something that's caught our attention quite a bit over here as well over the last couple of seasons. I think the angle here and the question is he good enough to actually displace Seamus Coleman permanently from that right back position? Because I'm not convinced.
Yeah, only time will tell, obviously, on that one, and in terms of what type of move it was, where Sidibe's at. I thought Seamus, again, as soon as he got back going in terms of his fitness levels, building it back up. Let's not forget he's got a pre-season under his belt now. I don't think any of us can really gauge the enormity of the injury that he went through and how hard it is to get back up to full tilt. I thought he'd done magnificent, and I think when you factor in what he's had to deal with Ireland and the competition with Matt Doherty, that whole saga that constantly goes on. Seamus is a leader. He's our captain. He's Everton's captain now. I fully anticipate him to start on Saturday.
Owen makes the point that Sheffield United are going to be a lot of Irish fans' second team, but there's a possibility that Bournemouth might elbow them out of the way, because not only Mark Travers, the goalkeeper who burst on the scene at the end of last year, but apparently Gavin Kilkenny, who I don't know that much about, but I guess you guys know a fair bit about him, has burst on the scene in pre-season and ran the game from the right wing against Lyon the other night, scored a goal, made another one, and might be in the frame for some first-team appearances this season.
Yeah, he's a player we had under 18 level when I was involved a couple of years back, and he's gone off to England, forged his apprenticeship at Bournemouth. Very talented player, technical player. Can play on either wing, any of those three positions. If it's a 4-2-3-1 behind the striker, and you're right, and that's the beauty of pre-season, Jerry. It's the fact that young players get an opportunity, and then it's up to them. If they can shine in an environment where they are surrounded by first-team players, because the first-team players can't play every game in pre-season, so that is your opportunity to really shine. Because when you go back to 23's football, 21's football in Bournemouth's case, they're surrounded by similar type players. So I think it's harder to actually shine. So he's clearly caught some headlines, seen some of that action from that game, and I'm with you. I thought he was absolutely magnificent. Seems to have grasped his opportunity. Harry Wilson signing may well be a bit of a stumbling block, because he obviously will play on that right hand side if he's up to speed. But it'd be great to see Gavin get in and around the first team, get some action, and then even get a loan move potentially.
Stay with us, Keith, because we're crossing over to agent Stephen Hunt, who's got the hottest phone in world football today. Stephen, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you doing? Hope you're well.
Are you wheeling and dealing? Is this one of your favourite days of the year?
Don't be start talking rubbish now. They're going to talk to me, talk constructively with all that kind of rubbish.
Hey, perfect.
You know
Good man,
no,
Hunty.
things like, hey, listen, it is what it is. It's a busy day, so enjoying it. You keep your head down and you try and get a couple of deals done. And if it's the right move for the player, then let it roll on.
And how active do you need to be? Is it are you hoping that clubs are coming to you? Are you constantly making sure that managers know that certain players...
Yeah, well, listen, I received a call last night at 10 to 12, and right now I'm in Dublin Airport on the way over to the UK to see if the deal can happen. So it's one of them where it might not, but you got to be on the spot to make sure it can happen.
So Keith is on the other line there, and he was talking about back in his day that the window didn't shut until 11 o'clock. The earlier shut of the window is supposed to inspire the teams to get business done, but that's not really how it works, is it? Would you prefer if the window didn't actually shut until 11 o'clock tonight to just give you that extra couple of hours?
11 o'clock would have been ideal for everyone. I think 5 o'clock makes it an office day's work, and as you can imagine, it's been going on for the last couple of hours. So it's a game of poker, I suppose, and Monday everyone put down their first card, and then everyone's laying down cards as you speak and seeing what falls into place and see who has the best hand at the end of the day.
You're obviously not entirely brand new to this, but there hasn't been like years and years of transfer deadline day for you. Is it actually something that you can kind of enjoy when it's over? Like tomorrow, if assuming that the move happens,
yeah, of course, and I still got some young players that can go to League 1 and League 2 after this window, so it's important for them too that you take that serious. But today is more about the Championship, Premiership and what moves and who goes where. I'm sure there'll be some movement, especially if you're a striker today. You must be loving it because you'll have 2 or 3 options to weigh up and go from there.
Well, listen, we know you're busy. Thanks very much for taking the call. We don't want to prevent you from taking another one, so hopefully we'll check in with you a little bit later on. That's Stephen Hunt giving us a little flavour of what's happening in his world at the moment. I guess, Keith, you're kind of glad that you're out of all that part of it, are you?
It is stressful, Jay. You can see Stephen there is obviously on his way over, and whatever player it is, he's going to be a nervous wreck. You know, in terms of not knowing where he's going to be tomorrow. You don't know what dressing room you're going to be in tomorrow, which is surreal, isn't it? And the knock-on effects of that, of course, are if you're married, if you've got kids, schools, etc. These are the type of factors. And at the top level, look, it doesn't really matter because the finance are at stake. When you go down the levels and you factor in those type of issues in terms of moving house, rent, finding somewhere, you know, these are very, very stressful scenarios. So, yeah, I think the extra few hours might have helped them out today.
We have an Arsenal fan in Owen and a Spurs fan in John Duggan, and they've been debating back and forth all morning about who actually has won the transfer window so far. Owen's making a good case that Arsenal, particularly considering at the start of the transfer window, they went very public with, we've got no money, we've only got 40 million, and somehow they've managed to spend way more than that and actually fixed legitimate holes in their team. Is kind of the opposite of how an Arsene Wenger transfer window would have gone.
Yeah, I agree. I've been impressed with what they've managed to get in the building, and they must have structured those deals in a way where they're able to pay them off over the term of the individual contracts. So it has been impressive. Pepe is a very, very good player, and I think he will flourish under Unai Emery. Defensively, they're looking to sort it. Obviously, David Luiz looks like he's going to go there. Kieran Tierney looks like that's going to get done as well. So that'll very much sort out the back four and help that situation. Koscielny gone is a massive blow. So that obviously was a breakdown in relationships. He clearly felt he needed to go back to France or leave Arsenal. But I have to say, I've been impressed with what Spurs have been able to do, and I don't think they're finished yet. It looks like Sessegnon today, Lo Celso as well, maybe, and added that to Dembele. I think they'll have a good window as well, and I would have to say I fancy Spurs to finish ahead of them. Yeah.
Like when I don't actually have any problem with that. I think that is definitely going to happen. I think John was actually being a bit too generous earlier on. But like when you actually factor it all into the mix and you take Spurs as a single kind of entity, like they've clearly had a better transfer window than Liverpool. Are Spurs now looking at top 2?
Yeah, do you know what? I was just reading up a little bit about them. Obviously, Troy Parrott's been involved in pre-season, so I've been keeping more of an eye on them than maybe normally would. And I agree. I think when you look at the squad, and the fact that was lingering with me last night was Christian Eriksen. If he can stay with all those other players, then you're looking at a serious team. Obviously, if anything happens to Harry Kane, massive concern. What do they do? But they've shown at times Son can fill in there. Lucas Moura can fill in there. He wouldn't be able to do it for a long period of time. But I'm with you, Owen. I think the fact that Liverpool haven't, I know that they're making a lot of the signings that were injured last year, the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain. Naby Keita has had a year to find his feet. So I would anticipate a similar type of level from Liverpool. But I would expect Spurs with the journey that they went on with the Champions League, the belief, the fact that they haven't made signings for the last couple of years. Next of all, there's a few arriving into the building. I think that has to be the aim. We need to step up a level.
Any other young Irish lads? Any other young Irish lads, Keith, that we should be looking out for that you think might have an impact this season unexpectedly?
I think the attacking unit is obviously quite exciting, which a lot has been made of the younger type players with Adamida at Norwich, Troy Parrott obviously at Spurs, and Aaron Connolly at Brighton. It's just whether they get the minutes on the pitch. And sometimes when you're too close to that respective first team, it actually you suffer because you're travelling up and down the country. You're with the first team all the time. You're travelling with them. It's great, but then you're not actually getting game time. Or sometimes a long move away for half a season when you go and play 20, 25 games can be more beneficial. Our captain for the 21s has obviously gone to Millwall, Jason Malumbi from Brighton for a season long. So that's going to be good for him. And again, hopefully he can get some minutes under his belt.
And then a final one for me, Keith, just in terms of any Irish players that, if you were their Stephen Hunt, if you were their agent, who would you actually be pushing them towards, or would you be pushing them towards the exit door? Because like you look through the list of Irish players in the Premier League, and like Nathan was in the studio a couple of weeks ago saying perhaps Robbie Brady should be considering a move, even if he has to step down a division.
I think it's difficult at times. You know, the agent can advise, obviously, and I would imagine in most cases they've got your best interests at heart. But if you're under contract to a club, for instance, a Robbie Brady, Sean Dyche ain't going to let him go anyway. They're finding it that hard to get players in because of the cost, because of the expense of what it costs these days to get players into the building with the strict wage budget that they have to play with. There's no way they would let a player of the ability of Robbie Brady leave. So, yeah, maybe on paper he might benefit from a fresh start, a different type of environment. But I can't see that happening. There's so many different kind of dynamics involved in getting that deal through that obviously the club have the final say.
Keith, great stuff. Good to talk to you again. Thanks a million, man.
Pleasure, lads. Take care.
Keith Andrews giving us some deadline day reaction and analysis.